One issue I haven't heard discussed at all this election, let alone this debate, is the debt and deficit.
Yeah.
Mick Mulvaney had a great quote, and he said, when there's a Democrat in the White House, my party, boy, do we care about the deficit's the worst thing in the world when Barack Obama's president. But Donald Trump came in and, we're not so worried about that anymore. He's right, isn't he?
So, look, I'm very worried about the debt. And I'm worried about it under Trump. Now, to be fair, Trump didn't campaign on cutting the debt.
He did. He said he was going to eliminate the national debt in 8 years.
He also said something, I'm the king of debt.
I'm the king of debt. I understand debt better than probably anybody. I know how to deal with debt.
In 2016.
Right.
Trump has said from day one, look, he gets to decide his priorities, and they're not necessarily all my priorities.
But here's the thing.
The fact that
I don't doubt your sincerity on this. You have been consistent. This is not directed at you. But stepping back, you belong to a party that has greenlit a historic expansion of deficits and debt. And it's just a plain fact.
Do I wish that it was a higher priority for the president to rein in spending and the debt? Yes. He didn't run principally on reining in spending and deficit and debt. That's not what he promised to do. We had real differences between it. And you know what? The voters made a decision.
I will remind you, he did promise to eliminate the national debt.
But let me give another element of it. Yeah. And this is where, in terms of how you eliminate the deficit and move towards reducing the debt.
You're going to say growth.
The most important factor. Trump's policies have been profoundly pro-growth.
Yeah.
The tax cut...
Also profoundly pro-deficit. Do you think your colleagues, the Republican Party, will rediscover its concern about debt and deficits?
Sure.
I mean, isn't that the most cynical, phony thing?
There's an element of it.
Doesn't that make you want to puke?
You're touching into something that, as you know, I have raged against. And I have raged against my own party not genuinely fighting to rein in spending and deficits and debt.
You tax China, they stop financing our debt, our economy collapses.
We tax China, we'll pay off their debt very quickly.
We have a country that's essentially a debtor nation right now. So we're going to make our country wealthy again.
I will bring our energy companies back. They'll be able to compete. They'll make money. They'll pay off our national debt.
The Obamacare repeal and replace plan would significantly reduce the federal deficit. Reforms major entitlements, now a principal driver of the $20 trillion debt that we have.
For many, many years, the United States has suffered through massive trade deficits. That's why we have $20 trillion in debt. So we'll be changing that.
It's literally first grade business. It's so simple. And the end result is it's tougher to get out because they've been so used to making so much money off our country, and we can't let them do that anymore. We're going to start paying down debt.
I am not happy with what he's doing. I'd like to pay off debt. I'd like to do other things and pay interest. Well,
we got a lot of it.
We do, and we're going to start reducing costs now that we took care of our military.
This is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you, okay? So there's never a default.
I believe that one of the biggest problems America has is the national debt. Yet it's rarely talked about on the stump. Most people don't understand it, don't care about it. Can you tell us tonight why a $19 trillion debt is important to the folks?
Well, it's really $21 trillion because the new budget deal lifts it up by at least $2 trillion. So the national debt in a very short period of time is going to be $21 trillion. We are mortgaging our future. We're mortgaging our children's future.
But what does that mean? How is that going to come back to hurt the kids? How?
Well, because we are going to have to pay this money back at some point, and at some point it's going to be impossible. You know, I've always heard and read a lot on it and understand it and went to Wharton and all of that stuff. I've always heard that $24 trillion we become Greece. And to a certain extent, we're getting to be a large-scale version of Greece.
Look, with all of the Social Security payments, with all of the Medicare payments, with all of the social welfare programs that we have, how is any human being going to bring down the debt? I mean, what are you going to do?
Okay, Bill, are you ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
So we have a country with no growth. We have no growth. You know, last quarter, did you see that? Practically zero growth, which is almost unheard of. When China does 7%, they're practically in a depression. We do nothing because our jobs
All right, so
are leaving.
You're going to grow it, but how will
that?
that bring down the debt?
No. I'll tell you how it's going to bring it back, because we're going to create a dynamic economy again. We're going to bring the jobs back from China, from Mexico,
but
from
you
Japan,
still owe the money.
from Vietnam. No,
you still owe the money,
Bill, but
so you bring it back. So how are you going to get the debt down?
Because the country is going to start growing and will be up to 4 and even 5%. And when we do that, we pay it back so easily.
How?
It's easy to pay it back. How? Because essentially, if you look at the country like a profit-making corporation or a losing corporation, right now we're a losing corporation. We're going to make it a profit-making corporation.
Okay, but then you're going to have to raise taxes
heart.
to get more money in to pay down that debt.
The problem we have is our taxes are so high that nobody can. Everybody's choking.
I don't know how
Bill,
you're going to. Even if you gin the economy up, how does that pay down $21 trillion? You have to take money from the corporations and people to do it.
Bill, the politicians have caused this problem, just so you understand.
I understand.
They've caused this problem over years. Now, listen, the politicians have caused this problem. We're going to make our country dynamic again. Now, companies, big companies like Pfizer, are leaving. They're going to make it worse. They're leaving. It's called corporate inversion. Many companies are leaving because the taxes are so high.
But if you cut the taxes, and again,
not raise taxes.
the revenue to pay down a debt then leaves. But okay, we'll tell that's for another day.
No.
You have confirmed.
But the country will be more dynamic.
I got it.
It'll be a dynamic. We are going to create a dynamic economy where real jobs are going to be pouring into the country, and we'll have a country that's sustainable.
Okay,
it'll work.
But still,
Bill.
the debt is still on the books. Now, you say you're going to be in the next.
Slowly pay down the debt.
Okay.
I do want a balanced budget. I've heard people say we'll balance the budget within 20 years. I'm saying 20 years. What are you talking about? The finances of our country are a mess, but we're going to clean them up.
With nearly $20 trillion in national debt, that this president is committed to fiscal responsibility.
The president does not want a budget that will add to the deficit.
This budget does not balance the budget.
We will balance the budget without making cuts in Social Security and Medicare.
The president is focused on, one, balancing the budget, bringing that debt down.
Growth is what our focus is, which is why we're willing to accept increased short-term deficits.
We're really increasing values, and maybe in a sense we're reducing debt.
Are you confident that the economy will grow consistently enough to cover these costs that otherwise would lead to a ballooning deficit?
Yes.
What can we realistically expect the national debt to be by the end of and I hope this is not hypothetical, but by the end of the president's first term?
I don't have a projection for that right now.
The deficit, which was one of the other criticisms, is coming down, and it's coming down rapidly. Growth solves a lot of problems.
We anticipate a much lower deficit share of GDP.
I don't know if you noticed, but deficits seem to be coming down. And last month it was reported, and everybody was surprised, but I wasn't surprised.
4 years going forward of $1 trillion+ deficits. How is that fiscal conservatism?
I wouldn't say that we needed deficits to get the economy starting. Deficits have certainly worsened in the first 2 years, but over 10 years, we believe that deficits will improve.
Give me another year or two on the deficit. As a share of GDP, we will cycle down that budget deficit in the years ahead.
The whole deficit thing is so contingent on the health of the economy, or the lack thereof.
Our economy is phenomenal, best it's ever been.
Low unemployment, GDP growth, and rising wages. America's economy is booming. But there is one troubling area of the economy that could become a big problem: America's rising national debt.
We have a huge debt and deficit problem in the United States, and we have to figure that out.
America currently owes to its creditors about $22 trillion, a figure that is expected to rise to $27 trillion over the next 4 years. That would be a 38% increase since President Trump took office in 2017, a problem he has previously acknowledged.
We are sitting on a time bomb.
But the more important statistic to look at is a country's debt to GDP ratio. America's federal debt is currently 78% of its GDP, and is estimated to rise to 96% by 2028. That would be the highest percentage since the end of World War II. Many other countries around the world have huge amounts of debt, but according to the International Monetary Fund, the US is the only advanced economy where debt relative to GDP is likely to increase. So how did we get here? Basically, the government has spent more money than it has taken in. The government mainly raises money from taxes and then uses that money to fund Social Security, healthcare, and defense. But the government does not have enough money to pay for these programs and borrows money instead. But how big of a problem is it? Well, it depends. Economists generally agree that increasing the federal debt is often needed when the economy needs a boost, such as when the financial crisis hit in 2007. The problem is that because of the huge tax cuts made by the Trump administration in 2017, this debt is increasing even though the economy is strong. In the first full year of Trump's presidency, the federal deficit rose to its highest level in 6 years, and it's projected to get higher and higher. It led to this rather scary statement from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Rarely have deficits risen when the economy is booming, and never in modern U.S. history have deficits been so high outside of a war or recession or their aftermath. Rising interest rates also mean that American interest payments on this debt alone are getting larger and larger. There is now a fear that we could soon have a debt crisis on our hands, where America is so deep in debt, when the next financial crisis hits, it won't be able to spend its way out of it. So how could this be solved? Many would argue to increase taxes and/or cut government spending. Under President Trump, an increase in taxes seems unlikely. In fact, huge tax cuts were made by his administration in 2017. There also seems little incentive on Capitol Hill to bring down the debt. This is a huge contrast from 5 years ago, when Republicans used it as one of their main lines of attack on the Obama administration.
We know where this path leads, straight into a debt crisis.
This president has proven that he will do almost anything to protect the size and the scope of Washington, D.C.'s burgeoning bureaucracy, including to threaten the economic security of every American by backing us up to the edge of default.
But there are few Republican voices calling for spending to be restricted now. It might not be a crisis yet, but with debt increasing, interest rates rising, and an aging population leading to more people than ever before relying on retirement benefits, the national debt time bomb, as described by President Trump, could one day explode.